And this has come down to 20% of calories from fat. You might have heard, you know, the American Heart Association says 30% of calories from fat for really healthy folk. Okay, well, that's what that's about. That's 20%, so it's under. Cholesterol, 174. We've got that in at 141 from the chicken. Sodium was a whopping 1,244. This is down to 498. You might need a little salt. When you taste it, you find out. And then dietary fiber, 4. This goes up to 6. I always get thrilled when I see that. Okay, I love it when it goes up. Now, take these off, otherwise I tend to get them steamed up. A little bit of the chicken, and there. Oh, nice. Quick enough for you? Come back after a hard day? Hope so. Don't forget, minimize the risk, maximize the flavor at the same time, because you want to please and care for people. Thanks for being with me. God bless you. See you next time. Bye. Welcome to Graham Kerr's Kitchen. It's really 2 programs in 1. This is a series that appeals to your creative side. Food that is sumptuous stuff. How could that be? This is a program about people who want to eat healthy and reduce calories. Actually, it's about food with an aromatic quality that fills the nose. Oh, sure. But it's also about keeping my arteries clean by reducing fat. But it doesn't mean a thing if the food isn't rich and colorful. Maximize the flavor. Okay, but I must have healthy food that I can cook in minutes. I must minimize the risk. So welcome to Graham Kerr's Kitchen, where we get our heads together just for you. Thanks so much for being here once again. This is a program where we're going to look at meat as a pioneer portion or something that's modern. And let me try and explain that to you. Come over here for a moment, because really it's something which is, are you like this? Do you look at things and say, I like the size of that? You know, for example, if you're buying a car or something like that, do you like cars which are huge or small? Because we're downsizing nowadays. What if we downsized as far as food was concerned? You know, in the early days, pioneers came here, and unquestionably, because there was a lot of meat around and because there was a lot of hard labor happening, a kind of stew would have easily that amount of pieces, chunks of meat in it. And say, well, some of the older recipes, mine included, by the way, suggested that 2 pounds of meat would go for 4 people. So you get 8 ounces of raw meat would go to be able to make 1. Okay. Well, now, what if we were to actually take one piece of meat and make it into a larger piece and then make a stew of it, say? It's all in the visual. It's all in the eyes, really. And if just serve that up in a sauce, well, I don't think we'd go very far at all. Well, there's a certain amount of vegetables used to go in the old stew, but in this case, a great deal more vegetables and, you know, both oranges and greens, all kinds of colors, would go to support that. So, in fact, the meat would no longer be the star of the issue. It would just be part of the cast. Now, in this particular case, you would go down to only 2 ounces per head. So if you were to actually drop the total meat content down to 2 ounces, do you know what would happen? It would be wonderful in terms of the reduction of risk because of fats and things like that. But it could also save you, for a family of 4, up to $1,000 a year. Want to see how that works? Come along, I'll show you. So much of what we're going to do today is going to be visualization. You know, we're going to see different things of different sizes. So let's dive in, first of all, and look at these 2 here. Now, these are both brown stews. They've been made by radically different methods. Here is the standard kind of stew thing. You notice what's happening here. We've got a good, rich stew with lots and lots of meat in it. Looks wonderful. It's been made with a roux on the base, which is really the butter and the flour mixed together. And what fat there is in that sauce, that is glistening. What you see is glistens. That's fat. I mean, it's just terrific stuff, wonderful. And there's small pieces of meat just nestle in it like so. Now, if I can dig out a piece here, what I've got here in the same spoon is really, and let's bring that spoon over to that one so we can see it closer. I've got slightly more brilliant look to it because then there isn't so much of the, the fat in it. And I've got a lot more vegetables, and I've got a larger piece of meat than I've got in the others. Do you see? Okay. Well, let's see how this all works. Let me show you the two pieces of meat and the decision that I would make if I were you, if I was going to pull back on this one. Here is a piece of meat which would be, this is called chuck steak, and I think that this would be the typical kind of meat that would be recommended for a stew because it has lots of connective sinews in it, and it's well marbled, it's got good fat running through it, you see, and that's what you'd look for before. And that would be a 2-pound piece of this for 4 people, is what recipes said. My recipes have said that prior to 1970. But I'm going to suggest to you that you go to a different cut of meat, which is this one here, and this is bottom round. Now, top round has a little less fat in it, and eye of round. But this one I prefer. It's got a little bit of fat in there, just enough to make it moist. And so this is the quantity I would use, 8 ounces for 4 people, instead of that huge visual size. Well, what do you do with that? I mean, surely it's got to look mean, but it doesn't have to look mean because look at these two. Here is a portion made with the meat. You see the amount of meat that you've got here, 8 ounces, and the vegetables in support of it. But when you go to this one, which has only got that one piece of meat in it, that 2-ounce piece of meat, now what you have to do is you've got here so much more vegetable that goes with it. And there's another factor as well. And that is, remember I said at the beginning that we got a roux in the thing, that we actually made the sauce from a roux? Well, this is a roux. It is fat, butter, normally, and flour, almost in equal quantities. And if you add up the sum of the total and then multiply by 6, that's the amount of liquid that it can actually contain and hold. And it's wonderful. I mean, to get it has a gorgeous flavor. But in this stew, all the fat is held in suspension. It's just held up in there. Gorgeous, but very fatty and very rich. In this one here, I don't have that at all because it's thin. That liquid is thin, and I have to thicken it somehow. So let's look at the way that you would finish off a sauce stew like this one. This one's ready to go. I'm going to sprinkle some peas in there, about half a cup of peas, and they look great. It immediately lifts that instead of it just being sort of bland. And this one, I'm going to add the same thing, but just before I do, you see this? You see that I've got here 2 eggs. Now, and just for effect, this needs to be seen. There's 2 cups of peas there and 2 eggs, and we talk a lot about protein. These are 6 grams of protein each. Each one of those eggs is 6 grams. And a cup of peas is 7 grams of protein. And that's true. So when you take these 2 cups of thawed peas, which I would add at the last moment, and just stir those in, you're in fact adding as much protein as breaking 2 eggs into the thing. Great. Good. Then some mushrooms. Now this is key when you're doing a stew of this nature. Have a look at this. If you take a mushroom and you cut it like this, which is the standard way that I cut a mushroom, so that you've got to a good texture and appearance to it. Now, drop those in literally almost before you're ready to serve. I've got about a dozen mushrooms there, and now you just simply turn the peas and the mushrooms. Look at it. Look at the textural. Look at how it looks visually. Somehow now you've got so many things going on that you don't quite notice the fact that you've got less meat than you might be accustomed to. But 2 ounces is a small portion. Okay, so we're bringing the heat up underneath there, and this is the last bit. Instead of that glossiness that we got in this stew here, which is very glossy and comes from fat, we're not going to get that with this technique. I'm going to pour 4 tablespoons full of de-alkalized red wine. I like that in the stew. If you don't want to use that, that's fine. Just use beef stock, and that would be just great. And I prefer that to water. And then mix this up with arrowroot. There's 2 tablespoons full of arrowroot for an average size dish of this nature. See how it's just beginning to bubble up there? Push it off the stove hot, isn't it? And just pour that in. Always take it off the stove before you pour it in and then pull it back, because it can hit the bottom of the pan and clench up quickly, you know, the starch in it, and it makes little dumplings, and that's not such a good idea. Now, you see, as you turn this, something's going to start to happen right before your eyes. It's going to start glossing. Do you see how that is beginning to gloss up now? That starch instantly thickens, and believe it or not, but, well, I'm sure that you would. Believe it or not, this is a strange statement to make. What happens to this is that the mushrooms are glazing and cooking at the same time as the peas are heating through, and you're ready to serve it. Now, that really works. What I'm going to do is just to show this in a... Have you ever been to one of those kind of bistro places, you know, restaurant thing? And you have a really nice-looking sort of stew, and they serve it in one of these sort of dishes. Have you ever had that? I think it's a great way to serve something, but you need to put it on a serviette underneath so it doesn't rattle all over the spot. And if you do that, it's very difficult to clean the plate. So always put that down, pick up a plate to sort of save yourself, and then get hold of your portion. And this is a good idea, actually, for ordinary plates and ordinary things. Look at how that looks. I've got room for just a little bit more. And the mushrooms, you can say to me, Graham, they're not really cooked. And I'm saying, you see, have you ever had raw mushrooms, okay, raw mushrooms in a salad? Well, okay. These are heated right through, and they've got this terrific, marvelous texture to them. Have a look at this. Stew is one thing, and you can see it looks great. Now, here. Here is the problem when you apply it to a steak. This steak is a steak called a London broil, or flank steak. So just spread it on there and get the garlic on the top and just sort of spread it on there, and I'm going to massage that in just a moment. On this plate, just a little touch of oil, just a little bit. And then some freshly ground salt over the top, just not too much, and freshly ground pepper. You're actually seasoning the plate. And then, after you've massaged in the garlic onto just really one side, and then pull it to one side. You can't have pieces of garlic on the outside of the steak. If you do, they'll burn, and it won't look good at all. So then just simply drop it down and run it around the plate. Right? And what you've got is you gradually, as you turn it backwards and forwards, you are completely seasoning that piece of meat ready to go. There's a little bit of garlic there, won't hurt. Okay, then drop it down into the pan, which is on the heat there. That's on just medium. I don't believe any longer in my life of cooking things flat out, full bore. Just medium to medium low, gentle cooking, wonderful texture, doesn't tighten all the sinews up. This is a tenderloin. Now here's the other piece, and I'm doing this so that I can give you the visual of a flat piece of food on a plate and the visual of a high piece that stands up on the plate for steaks, because there's different problems. Right? This is the tenderloin, which is kind of the king of all steaks and has little bits of trim that need to come off it. But I want to cut a piece which is about 8 ounces, and hopefully that's about 8 ounces. I've got little scales here, and I just can never see whether it's on or not. Ah, it's on. All right, what have we got there? 7. Well, nearly 8. That's the Scottish in me coming out. All right, just wipe that in the same seasoning as before, and you don't need to put oil in the pan, and just drop that down in the pan. I want to cook that up before, just as we go and have a look at the numbers. All right, put that over there. Get that out of the way. Everything cooking nicely? Great. Let's go and have a look at this and compare these numbers, all right, with the way that it would be if I had the whole of that, you know, the one that I've been showing you before. Now, looks good. I think just a dab of parsley on the top would look great. And what I was trying to do here is to make it look reasonable with all the added vegetables, and yet only be a 2-ounce portion instead of all these pieces and being 8 ounces. So I hope I've done that. Let's have a look and see what it looks like in terms of numbers. Now, because you've got a lot of vegetables in here, and potatoes are part of it, I've got 576 in terms of calories, which is, the whole meal, everything in one pot. Fat was 22.7 in the classic. This is right down to 4, which is very good. And so saturated fat is only 1 gram of that 4 is saturated. This pleases me. Now, this really pleases me. This stew, which shows you that a good, well-made stew can still just about fit the American Heart Association guideline, which is 30% of calories from fat. Now, look at this. 6%. Truly wonderful. I mean, this thrills me. Cholesterol, 118, is dropped down to 47. Sodium is 497, which is perfectly okay. And dietary fiber is a whopping 17. And that shows you what you do when you make the exchange between the high price of meat and the lower price of vegetables. You're actually going to get a tender piece of meat, you see, because the larger the piece, you have to attack it with a knife and fork. You can add other ingredients to it, you see. Oh, that's so good. Yeah, I don't think it's mean at all. Let me just taste up the mushroom. Such texture. When you get that, you've got the chewiness of the meat, and then you've got this texture of the mushroom, which just adds to the whole feeling of the textural side of it. Okay? Okay. Well, there's the concept done for a stew. Now, we're going to go back and look at how steaks work, because steaks are not as easy to do as this is. You ready for it? Okay, come on. Let's have a go. Okay, well, everything seems to be doing fine here. Let's have a go at it. Steaks are a little bit more difficult, because when you start to get down to it and you look at a tenderloin steak, you remember the one that was cut that thick, that I put in here now, and that 7 ounce, that's about 460 calories, all right? And the one I'm going to cut here is 117. Now, I can hear you say, come on, you're joking. But I'm not. That's about 2 ounces. If you're going right down to 2 ounces, you could go up a little bit, to about 3.5, 4 ounces. But I wanted to show you in 2-ounce pieces. What I do is just pound that down a little bit so that, in fact, something like this little ramekin dish would be almost exactly the right size for that. And there's a reason for that. Down into the same seasoning before. Just slosh it into the pan. Drop it down by its little mate, which is doing fine now, and just seal it on the one side and just flip it on the other side. That's right, and it won't take a moment or two before that's going nicely. All right, here's the London broil, which is sizzling away nicely there, and the pan's got all the juices down. What I would do with a tenderloin is this. I'd take a whole onion, that size, and a clove of garlic, and I'd fry that in a little, chop it fine and fry it in a little oil, and then throw in half a cup of mixed rice and a quarter of a cup of barley and a quarter of a cup of wild rice, a little salt and pepper, and some fresh herbs on the top, just some thyme and parsley and a couple of bay leaves, right? And then put that into a casserole dish at about 375 degrees Fahrenheit, 190 degrees centigrade, and leave it there about 45 minutes. And when you bring it out, you'll just be able to get hold of the herbs and just dispose of those. They will actually have gone down and into the dish perfectly. And then get this little ramekin dish, the one that we used as the measure, and get up the pilaf. Now grease it just gently first of all. Gently. How do you grease a thing gently? I mean, just a little bit of oil in the bottom, and press it down really tight. Get enough in. Don't make it brim full, but press it down tight. Now, if you do these for each person that you're doing, it's half a dozen of these little ramekin dishes. They're very useful for custards and other things. So you can put those in a baking dish, stick them on a rack, and put them in the oven, and then you've got it all ready, for a dinner party when you're ready to serve. You just grab a hold of it like this, Turn the steak over another time. Oh, looks nice. And then just drop that. Of course, it'll be hot at the time, but you could put a cloth over it. And then just give it a little sharp tap. That's the reason for the little bit of gap that we left behind. There you are, see? And it comes off, looks wonderful, and that is used as a sort of lift up of something which is very thin. You see? Now, very thin, you can drape that on the top, and then take fresh vegetables there, you know, lovely pieces of broccoli, and a good hunk of those who've got, they're bright orange, they've got to be carrots. All right, and that's the start. That's almost ready to serve. All right, let's put that on one side. Now here is the steak before. You see how that steak looks like that now? The whole idea is to bring it up and to give it that sort of the height a little bit. And then vegetables on that one as well. I wanted to you know, not just compare it dully, but to give it a chance to be able to live side by side. Okay, how's that? Good. Now, and just a little bit of the rice pilaf. Just to make sure that everybody's sort of doing right. How's that? Good. All right. Now, that's that dish, but it doesn't stop there, because you've got to move from that into the flat area. That's the upstanding one. Now, what about the flat one? Well, this is the flat. This is the London broil, and this is a great steak, by the way, to be able to use from this point. It's got low fat in it. Drain any surplus fat that there is in the pan from the pan, dust it out with the paper, you know how I do it, and then take a certain amount, what's it, 1, 2, 3, 4, about 4 cups of this dealcoholized wine here, and then stir it off the bottom so as to get the residue of those meat residues off the bottom and into the wine. Just get that heated up for a moment. And then just a little arrowroot. Now this is where you're going for the little tiny sauce at the end. About 2 tablespoons full of the wine. Might as well keep the wine going. If you don't want to use wine, just the same as before, you can use stock instead. And when you've got it like this, you just simply withdraw it from the pan, always withdraw it from the pan, and throw it, move it around quickly, very quickly, so that it doesn't form those lousy little dumplings which can ruin the whole thing. Shake the pan, a little bit of parsley on the top. Gosh, that looks nice. All right, so there's your sauce. It's all ready to be able to anoint the whole thing. Okay, let's have a look at and see how you carve this. You simply take diagonal slices through with the London broil. You carve it diagonally. You see how that looks? And you just carve that through there, nice and pink, perfectly done. And there is a very thin, flat slice on the plate. Now, see how this looks against this. See how it covers about the same amount of plate size, about the hand. Well, then all you need to do is to take a little of this sauce and just pour that sauce over the and don't cover the whole thing. Let me show you what this looks like now. If you finish this dish off by putting a little of the sauce, that deglazing, over the top. Now, doesn't that look great? All right, I'll give you just a touch. All right, let's have a go. Let's walk down the aisle here. Oh, I need just a little bit of broccoli, you see, to go in here as well. Doesn't that look nice? Remember, fill the plate up with things that you absolutely love when you're cutting down on the meat side. Looks good. All right, this is what I did here. I actually did the casserole dish so that I have a large piece of meat and I can get into it with a knife and fork, 2-ounce piece. Here was the big prime rib, about 8 ounces. I've got a 3.5-ounce piece here of the flank, and that looks really super. Here I had the tenderloin, a 7-8-ounce tenderloin, and here I've got a 2-ounce tenderloin sat up to give you some visual height on it. So, how's that? Don't forget, one of the really important things of this one is to measure the meat and think of the vegetables. When you cut down on meat, you can just spend all you like on vegetables and still save an awful lot of money. All right, here are the 2 dishes. Let's compare these 2 together for numbers. Let's go. All right, now here, there's the one that we've done. There is the prime rib. Now, I must say that A prime rib would normally be, well, let's face it, 10 ounces or 12 ounces, something like that. And that is a lot of meat, and much more than these numbers. But I've taken the conservative 8 ounce. That's 709. This is what we do with it. We cut it over half, 305. Fat was 34, down to 8 total. Saturated fat was 13, down to 3. Percentage of calories from fat then is not 43, but 22%. Love it. Oh boy, I love this when it goes like this. Cholesterol, 181 down to 58. And sodium, 171 down to 80. Listen to all those down statements here. Dietary fiber, 5, and it's gone up to 6. I'll tell you, you know, if you are somebody who likes meat, and you said a husband likes meat and family likes meat, there's no real reason why not to actually get down to it with a piece of London broil like this. It is very tender. It's got great flavor. And, you know, if you don't like the wine, then, as I said, use the beef stock. But give yourself a little bit of a glaze. And the flavor of the wine is in there, too. If you like meat, you can still enjoy it and cut right back on the portion size. That'll minimize the risk and boost the flavor to the ceiling, all right? And save you a lot of money at the same time. Until then, God bless you. Look forward to the next program. Bye. Welcome to Graham Kerr's Kitchen. It's really 2 programs in 1. This is a series that appeals to your creative side. Food that is sumptuous stuff. How could that be? This is a program about people who want to eat healthy and reduce calories. Actually, it's about food with an aromatic quality that fills the nose. Oh, sure. But it's also about keeping my arteries clean by reducing fat. But it doesn't mean a thing if the food isn't rich and colorful. Maximize the flavor. Okay, but I must have healthy food that I can cook in minutes. I must minimize the risk. So welcome to Graham Kerr's Kitchen, where we get our heads together just for you. And it really is just for you. That's the whole purpose for this whole, bit of effort that we do. There'll be a basic technique, if you haven't watched this before, and I'll wrap a little recipe around that, and then we go on from that to a major, big, wonderful, well, it's not that big, really. A nice dish where I actually use the basic technique and then kind of springboard into using it for those purposes. Now, today, I'm fascinated by this particular subject. It's really when you've got a piece of meat like this, and people say to me, Graham, what would you do to do the greatest difference to my diet, my way of life, my health, risks, etc.? What would you do? And I said, well, what you could do, says me having taken blue, I mean, you've never seen a piece of blue meat before, but anyway, what I would do, I'd say cut that in half, all right? Cut the piece of meat in half. If you normally put 6 ounces of meat, then you actually cut it in half, put 3 ounces. And add to that some grains or rice or seeds, some means or beans, some means of adding on the rest of the plate something that's really attractive that you like, that that doesn't have fat in it, all right? So halve what you know does have fat in it, and add the rest of the things you like, which doesn't have fat in it. Okay, so that's what this is today. It's an extender. It just means taking a little bit of protein and making it into a marvelous dish. And I'm going to do that, first of all, with a time-honored idea with a little chicken and make a pilaf, all right, with rice. Come on, I'll show you how it's done. Got lots to do, so off we go. 1 teaspoonful, and you might have noticed I use so little oil and fats. It's really not necessary to sort of throw it in. and wind the heat up underneath that, and I've got just here 8 ounces of chicken. Now, the chicken is off one side of a bird. Now, I mean, I don't want to make a fetish out of this, but you'll notice there's dark meat there and white meat as well. And whilst it's cooking, let me show you. If you take a regular chicken, or even an irregular chicken, I suppose, and cut through the breast and carve the knife down so that you take the breast off, you've got this as breast meat, and of course you've got this as the leg meat. Now that, when you trim it all off, is 8 ounces. From a 3.5 pound bird, you get about, 1 pound of meat. So what I'm going to do is, instead of using the one bird for 4 people, I'm going to use half the bird for 4 people. Thereby, I've halved the amount of food which could have any fat in it at all. Right, put that to one side. By the way, the trimming of the fat content is this. So all of that could have gone into a dish if you were roasting it or casseroling it and leaving the skin on, we've got rid of that as well. So that's an added plus factor. All right, this is stirred around. So you actually need to cook this for about 5 to 6 minutes. And in 5 or 6 minutes' time, the protein will coagulate through. The internal temperature is about 165, and you've done it. You must go above 140 in order to be able to kill any potential little lurky germs that you don't really want to have. All right, let me show you the onion. In this case, the onion is simply cut into small dice, and I'd like to make a point whilst I'm doing this for you. You just cut it down there, and it's got the natural, the natural way that an onion goes is this way. So when you cut down across the leaves of the onion, then all you have to do is cut it that way, and you've got nice little dice. You see, I think that a lot of people have been sold a strange statement, which is make as much time as you possibly can for yourself by using a lot of ingredients that don't require any time or skill or anything at all, such as dried onion flakes. Excuse me. So I'm sure that if I was north of Alaska somewhere and, the Huskies had gone on strike, it might be a reason for actually doing this. Keep stirring the chicken, by the way, and keep it going. But I've tried using this, and I'm sorry, and if you make it, I apologize but if I sound as if I'm critical, but I don't like it. I like to be able to take a knife and about 30 seconds and actually come up with real onion. It really makes a lot of difference. All right. This chicken, let's make that assumption for a moment. That's gone through the 6 minutes so I can get it out of the pan. And this is one of the pans that I have that don't have funny handles to hang on to, so I have to hang on to it with that. Swirl it all round and then out onto the plate. Good. Now I've got the meat juices left behind here, and I don't want to waste those at all. Just put just a little soupçon of oil in there so as to get the natural volatile oils of the onion out, and just shoot those in on top. And I need a whole large onion in the dish, so there's the other side. I bore you with the other bit. And that is going. Now I'm going to just throw into, to cook at the same time as the onions, this Louisiana long grain rice. And that's any long grain rice will do, really. And just stir it in so that what juices there are from the chicken and that oil are now just coating it, and the onion can cook through at the same time as beginning to flavor the rice. Lovely. This is a great sort of basic pilaf idea, okay? And you can use it so many different things. Here's the rice. Now, the rice could be the long grain rice that I showed you before, or it could be a brown rice, in which case you'd have to cook it for almost twice as long. But try and avoid this rice here. Now, this rice has its own uses, but this is a little fat rice called pearl rice, if you like, or sticky rice, or sweet rice. That one doesn't do a very good pilaf, so that's why I chose that one. Right, when this is just tossed around a little bit and you start to smell it sort of coming, wafting up there, then you get good chicken stock. Now, always twice the amount of stock than you have rice, twice. So get 2 cups of rice in there, 4 cups of stock. just throw it in and stir it all around. Just swill it around and to get any sort of errant little rice grains around the top. Whip that down into it. That's a lovely sound. Let's get started. A little herb onto there. This herb is tarragon. And if you look in recipes for chicken, you'll find that tarragon, French tarragon, occurs a great deal. A little spiky, marvelous, wonderful herb. Drop that down on the top. Just let it lie there. It will diffuse its herbal essence throughout. And the bay leaf, just float that on the top as well. I'll show you the reason for floating that in just a sec. Okay, so time to get into the oven. Now, the oven should be set at 450 degrees Fahrenheit, which, as we all know, is 230 degrees centigrade. Yes? Oh, I'll tell you what. And just before you rush for the oven, a little freshly ground salt. Now, only a little. You've actually got to keep on doing this until you get through a quarter of a teaspoonful. That's what I want. I want a full quarter teaspoonful because there is such a lot of rice there that, and by the way, it's a real tummy full. It's a real gut stretcher, this one, in terms of the amount of rice that we've got in. Okay, so pop that up into the top oven there. Don't put a lid on it. Just let it go. 20 minutes. That's all it takes. And ready? And just pull it out from the bottom. Push it through. And don't forget, you've got to learn the backward oven close. You don't have to, of course, but if you've got it's a little hard if you've got a higher one than that. Here, this is the reason why I left the herbs right on the top like so, all right? So that they can just be pulled out very easily. Then, all you really need to do is to get the chicken, which, as you know, is cooked, and drop that down onto the surface. And then, you've got a most fantastic thing that happens here. Because you've got the chicken, which is nice and juicy, a nice, also a juicy thing you can do is to cut in the sort of traditional shape that I like to cut things, a 1-inch wide piece of mushroom, and drop those into, and I've got 8 ounces of mushrooms there. And if you stir that in, always be sure to hang on to it. Look, oh, see what's happened? How the rice has, how it's completely absorbed all the stock. And now what I'm doing, I'm stirring all of that in together. And I've got 4 green onions, you know, spring onions, these little fellas here. 4 of those, and just drop that into the top and stir that around. And that's got to go back in the oven just for 5 minutes, just to be able to reheat the chicken and get it sort of going nicely. Oh, no, I should have left the oven door open. So, there we go, once again. Just pop it back in and same heat and just let it go in. Now, over here, some Swiss chard, and drop that into the top. It hardly takes any time at all to get through. This is Swiss chard, by the way. If you haven't seen it around, it's a magnificent broad green leaf with a fabulous red stripe through it. And that's very finely sliced so that, you know, it looks just like this, tremendously fine. And on top of that, just a little balsamic vinegar. Now, balsamic vinegar, look, have you ever seen vinegar that deep in color? This is brewed for as much as 10 years in different kinds of oak and juniper and, oh gosh, I forget all the different kinds of different wood barrels that it's put into. And it's done in Modena in Italy. That's the genuine one, and look for it as a genuine product. And you have the most exciting little kind of wreath that you can ever imagine when you serve this up. All right, quick stuff. Out from the oven, having heated up, and that actually, though you don't cook the mushrooms in any way, what happens is extraordinary. The heat of the rice actually makes this incredible combination come alive. Now look, you see there is, and this is 4 portions. Come on, I've got to keep on adding it. This, as I told you, was a bellyful. And then you take the Swiss chard and you pile it around the sides. Come on, Graham. And it's got that balsamic vinegar in it, which gives it that crisp, aromatic sort of flavor and a little acidic thing. It's gorgeous. Looks great. Look, come on, I'll show you the numbers. And the smell is that aroma that comes up is fabulous. I'll tell you what I've done. I've compared this to the classic, pilaf idea. Remember what I did? Halve the amount of meat and then fill the plate with the extenders, with the grains, all right? And so this is what happens when you do that. From 828 calories, it goes zing down to 406. And remember what a plateful that is. So in 28 grams of fat there comes down to only 5, with 1 from saturated, which is super stuff. So I get a 10% of calories from fat. And that's the kind of thing I'm trying to aim for when I really feel as if I've succeeded. And then 31 milligrams of cholesterol, good stuff. 347 coming down on sodium. And 5 is, of course, because it's compared to the rice in the pilaf, and that's the way it is. Okay, so now let's see whether there's a large hunk of... I'm sorry. This is one of my favorite moments in my whole life, is to be able to eat. Of course, I like cooking for you, too. The combination between the two is just fantastic. We halve the risk, and we've doubled the amount of pleasure. And that's the whole Minimax idea. Okay. So, as you know, we're going to try a springboard with this one. And don't forget the springboard, by the way. Now, my springboard is going to be to take that basic idea with the extender, and I'm going to take some beef and some quinoa, which is a very unusual herb which grows in the high Andes, and put that together for a startling new dish, which is one of the best dishes I've ever made. Okay? Come on. Right, now, what I'm going to deal with is quinoa, and Quinoa, and you might have pronounced that quinoi or something like that. I used to. And it's all right. Now, this is what it's like. It's actually a seed from a large herb in the high country in South America. And it really is a delicious thing to add to food. And it's a very simple thing, too, because all you have to do is 1 cup of quinoa and 2 cups of boiling water. And if you simply pour that into the top like so, that's all you have to do. Bring it back to the boil, and 8 to 10 minutes later, it will look like this one over here, which I'll show you in a moment. Okay. All right. Now, to get this pot on the go, I just want to put a teaspoonful of oil in there, and, the usual, start, which is to bung in a large onion, and that's finely diced. It's just like the one I did earlier on. Okay, so that's just shoveled around there. And 3 cloves of garlic. Now, this is where you sort of, I don't know, this is, I like this idea because it takes forever in a garlic press to do it. But that's got it there, and I can practice my karate swing. Actually, if you get some of the garlic onto it, you've got a double karate chop. You can sort of approach somebody with your karate thing, and they go like this. All right, so just a little bit of the garlic, then just crushed up and down into the top. So now you've got those 2 onions, and that although when I say sulfurous smell, don't get me wrong, that is one of the most wonderful aromas, I think, in the whole kitchen. Good. Now, into this, I just want to take a little beef and do this, show you what I've got here. The first thing, this is bottom round. And bottom round is a very lean cut. Now, if you were going to buy this and you would buy a piece for, say, 4 people, you might buy a piece like this and roast it, or braise it would be better. I'm going to take just 8 ounces. So you see, we've taken a heavy reduction in terms of the amount of meat. All right. And this can be put into, and I always buy meat in a larger piece, by the way, and cut it up myself, and then either mince it or put it through a small processor like this one. And then just pulse it to get it into the mince. Now, other people make minced beef, and I think that's wonderful that they do. And, but in my case, I want to know what it is that I'm getting. I want to be able to look at that meat and see that it is very fine and doesn't have a lot of fat running through it. By the way, I take it very seriously, the kind of textural result I get there. About 20 pulses will actually do it. I don't want it overdone, I don't want it slushy. I want just a bit of texture in it because I want to feel it when it's cooking. Now you see how that's coming now? Pan and the meat is just, the onions are nicely browned, and the flavor and that oil that has come up from them. Just put this away, wash it up. If you've got one of the little hand ones, that's fine to do it with that. Now, stir it all in together so that you've got the heat from that pan is now going to cook this meat. It doesn't take much cooking at all. Very small quantity of meat, large quantity of the grain of the seed, in fact, in this case, is going to be added to it. So shovel it all around, and then take a tablespoonful of tomato paste, of the low sodium one. Remember, if you saw that one, this is called the Maillard principle. Stir that into the bottom, and that should start to darken the color of the eventual dish. The longer you can let this go, say about 4 or 5 minutes, will be just terrific. And incidentally, something that you can add to this from a color point of view is a little light sodium content, soy sauce. And you see, Zen Buddhists understood this because they didn't eat meat, but they missed somehow or wanted to have a flavor that ran through the whole dish. So you put that in as well with that tomato paste. It's an incredible base color for this one. All right, good. And then onto this goes also the sweet red pepper, and chop that up in small pieces. And about this time, because we want you to be able to get all of that as a medley of flavors, give that about 3 or 4 minutes, cooking round. Then take the quinoa. Now this is the quinoa when it is cooked. It's had this 8 to 10 minutes cooking time, and it has the most wonderful sort of appearance. I'm going to take a little bit of that one and show that to you on the tip of my finger there. See? It's like a rice grain, but it's just showing a little bit of the starch content. It pops in the mouth. It has the most wonderful texture. And if you go to an average supermarket, you may not find it. How about a health food store? Or, drop us a line if you must, and we'll try and find it for you, okay? So just stir it all the way around. It's going to become one of the most important grains that there are, or seeds that there are, because it is such a wonderful protein content. So that's going well. Now, on top of this, we've got here some sweet corn, 1 cup of thawed sweet corn. And look at the colors now. Now, all we really need is green. So I've got 2 tablespoons full of cilantro and 2 tablespoons full of parsley. And stir this in. About this stage, when you're making this one, you're going to look down and say, oh, aroma, color, and texture, and it's all coming together. A little cumin seed, ground cumin seed, 1/4 teaspoonful of that. And to give it that kind of bite which lurks up on your tonsils and says, hello, this is 2/4 teaspoonfuls of what I call the Creole torpedo. That's cayenne pepper. That gives it... When you've got food which hasn't got so much meat in it, and there's a lot of these grains, you've got to spark it. It's got to have bright notes in it. Okay, so then just 1 cup of stock hits the top, and that is just there for a very intriguing purpose. It's there just to heat up for a moment, and I'm going to take a... You having fun? I'm having an enormously good time. I hope you are. Okay, just a tablespoonful of arrowroot, and just a couple of tablespoons full of ordinary water, and stir that up and dump it in. And what will happen is that will gloss as though it has oil in it. Extraordinary. Now, here's a plate, and I took 4 potatoes and mixed with those potatoes 1/2 cup of buttermilk, and just simply made enough of that in order to be able to pipe onto a plate so as to create a kind of nest of green potatoes with cilantro and parsley in them, all right? Just fill in the little gaps. And with the buttermilk, it tastes wonderful and looks great. And it's a super thing to be able to have with that sort of food. Now, you see what's happened here? That's become glossy and colorful. So then you just take that up and slosh some of it outside the nest, as always. Sloppy cook. And we'll put that to one side. Push it down underneath, you know, just like when you're cleaning the front room. And under the carpet. There we go. And come on, I'll show you how it compares with a classic. Actually, a classic is a dish called Lindstrom, which is a marvelous dish if you actually know it. It's a good one. So that's what that looks like. It's very colorful. Now, this dish is with ground beef and potatoes and a little cream and beets in it. Great dish. And that saturated dish with the full amount of the meat in it comes out at 407 calories, you see. And in this case, what we've got here is 406 calories. Why all the trouble, you say? Ah, watch it. See, 30 grams of fat is now down to 5 grams of fat, and 14 grams of saturated fat with Lindstrom down to only 1. Now, you see, 66% calories from fat is now down to 11%. So if you're worried about fat, this clears a worry right out. 49 milligrams of cholesterol right down, you see. Sodium up a bit because we got that light soy sauce, which is carrying flavor. Dietary fiber at 6, so we've actually got the fiber bit up, which is wonderful. Okay, remember that when you cut the meat down, you also need to get the vegetables up to be able to make that combination. What an incredible dish. Ah, it's got that good smell. That's the cumin, I can smell it. Oh, hello tonsils. Hello tonsils. There's that wonderful little hatch there with that Creole torpedo there. It's got color and everything. Great. If you want to minimize the risk for those you care for and maximize the flavor with aroma, color, and texture because you want to please people, that's one of them. Okay, thanks for being with me once again. God bless you. Lots of love. Bye. Welcome to Graham Kerr's Kitchen. It's really 2 programs in 1. This is a series that appeals to your creative side. Food that is sumptuous stuff. How could that be? This is a program about people who want to eat healthy and reduce calories. Actually, it's about food with an aromatic quality that fills the nose. Oh, sure. But it's also about keeping my arteries clean by reducing fat. But it doesn't mean a thing if the food isn't rich and colorful. Maximize the flavor. Okay, but I must have healthy food that I can cook in minutes. I must minimize the risk. So welcome to Graham Kerr's Kitchen, where we get our heads together just for you. And great welcome. Wonderful. Lovely to have you here. Look, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. Do you love picnics and sort of getting out even when it's pouring with rain, especially when it's that? Well, I'm going to try something with a picnic. As usual, it's going to be a little bit of a technique, first of all, very unusual crust. And then what I'll do is actually get into some kind of enormous, wonderful dish, creative stuff, which we call springboarding into that second part of the program. Okay? All right. Now, rice crust is what this is all about. And I got to thinking, if you just take a sort of side view of a quiche, you know, quiche is really fat and flour put together with a nice crumpled edge on the top, and then quite possibly streaked through the quiche would be either eggs, ham, mushrooms fried in a little butter, you know, crusted with cheese on the top. Am I getting to you? I know, getting to me. And so if you took just the anatomy of a picnic quiche to take out with you, it would have to have a lot of fat, plus a lot of flour, and as a result, a lot of calories. All right? Now, what I'm going to try and do is to do a completely radical technique of putting an unusual ingredient right the way through the crust and then doing something quite different inside so as to start reducing the fat and maybe even replacing flour altogether. In fact, not even maybe. We'll do it. All right? Interested in that one? Okay. Let's have a go. And the way that you actually get rid of the flour altogether is rice. You know, about 6 out of every 10 people in the whole world subsist on rice. So it's not surprising, and I don't know, we call this fusion, you know, an Asian concept, you know, mixed with Western idea. All right, good. Well, here I've got 4 cups of water going at the boil, and put into there long grain rice, just tip it in 1 cup of long grain rice. And then it'll come back to the heat quite quickly, and about 1/8 of a teaspoonful of salt in there. Even if you've been told, you know, stay off salt altogether, please do me this favor. This 1/8 of a teaspoon's okay. It's not going to do any harm. And really, it just sparks it up a little bit. Otherwise, it's very dull. All right, good. Let's bring that up to the boil. Now, here is the same amount of rice which has been cooked, and I just took it off the boil to stop it from cooking too much. 10 minutes, that's had, just 10 minutes. So take a strainer like this one, and just pour the rice out, and then put just underneath there, just one, don't you like that magic thing? Just 1 inch of water in the bottom of the saucepan, and put that on the top again, and you see this is coming to the boil now. Put a lid on the top of that. Now, when you're serving rice normally, that will now boil up underneath to steam, and will steam that rice out just at the last moment, and you get really good rice. All right, but I want to use this just in its strained condition. Drain it out of the water, and get that out, and whack it into a bowl. All right. Now, that's hot, right? So here I just want to add 1/4 cup of cheese. And this cheese, by the way, if you take a good look at it, this is Monterey Dry Jack cheese. It's characterized by this brown, heavy rind on the outside. It's a great cheese, very good, made in California, and very good for this kind of a deal. All right, so we've got the rice, and we're going to season this with just a 1/4 cup of the rice, exactly 1/4 cup. Oh, by the way, if you're going to buy cheese in a block, which I think, by the way, is much better than the stuff you can get in a packet, which is already grated. Now, I don't want to ever say anything wrong or upsetting to anybody, but that stuff, you know, kind of, I don't like it. So I buy the cheese in a block, and then get just any old plastic bag and just clip it tight. Keep it in the fridge. It'll last and last, and you'll really enjoy it. Okay, so that's done. 1/4 teaspoonful of black pepper. And I had been using white when it came to white things, but gosh, it's so nice to be able to say to people, look, see the black pepper? There's flavor in it. And then just a little bit more of the salt. Now, come on, Graham. Now, you're overdoing it. No, I'm not, truly. It's just the same 1/8 teaspoonful here. So that brings it up to 1/4 teaspoonful altogether. And that's very important. Okie doke. Good. One thing just to bind that mix together is just a little egg white. You don't have to worry about the temperature, you know, and all this stuff that we're hearing about recently with egg white, because this bakes in the oven, kills any little bugs. Stone dead. They die at about 140 degrees Fahrenheit. Any temperature over that for more than 10, 15 minutes, it's gone. Okay, so just pour in the egg white. Now you've got quite a combination, because you can just simply stir this together, and so you get cheese flavored, hung together with the egg white, well seasoned, salt and pepper, and it smells good too. You know, it's such an important test of how a thing's going to taste, whether the aroma's really there when you're actually cooking something like this. This is a great idea, by the way. All right, then you move it together as if it's kind of like a ball. Just smash it together in the pan like so. And then get out whatever you're going to use as the quiche dish. All right. Now, in this case, I've just used the cheapest possible non-stick pan. All right, let's get this out of the way. You could use a really nice, if you're going to present the thing at a table, you know, or take it out on a picnic and take it with you, then take one of these ceramic ones and just give it a